Permit me to state the obvious, but Americans have a lot of stuff. Nearly 1 in 5, that's about 18% of Americans, currently have one of those storage units you see down the road in some form or another. The number one reported items tend to be furniture, followed by clothing, appliances, and those occasionally large or exotic vehicles you see parked in the lots. Maybe having an overabundance of possessions maybe it's a generational phenomenon, as we've discussed in last week's Bible study, a relic left over from the Great Depression era. Although actually the survey also notes that many younger Americans today, perhaps for different reasons, with fewer or smaller homes, are beginning to rent just as many of those storage spaces as well. Now, my parents' home in Cleveland, Ohio is no exception. Just take a quick stroll through the garage, the basement, and extra bedrooms if you can find a path to wind through. You'll find all sorts of piles of old toys, clothes, furniture, and multitudes of boxes and storage tubs with various collected items from over the decades. Just my previous visit to my parents uncovered one of my favorite discoveries in the attic upstairs, which was tubs of Beanie Babies. You all remember going from one McDonald's to the next trying to find those, don't you? They'll be valuable one day. Now, keep in mind, I listened to all of these stories from decades of my own experiences as well as of my friends and neighbors. Many of us have similar stories of what we've stored over the years in our homes or in our lives. And just recently, I was listening to a wonderful podcast. It's by Rich Roll. Have any of you all maybe listened to the Rich Roll podcast? If you haven't, I recommend it. It's with a very interesting guy, this particular interview. The guy's name is Robin Greenfield. And the Robin Greenfield website describes him in this way. It says he lives simply and sustainably to be the change he wishes to see in the world and in active resistance to the destructive and exploitive systems. His life is an experiment with truth and integrity, dedicated to liberation and basic rights for all, earth, humans, and the plants and animals we share this home with. Now, some would describe Robin Greenfield as an extreme minimalist. And the latest project of his proves this point. You see, he owns nothing. And let me repeat that. Robin Greenfield currently owns nothing. Nada. The clothes he wears are borrowed for no longer than 10 days at a time from his friends or his neighbors. He currently sleeps outside among the thousands of other homeless people in Los Angeles, eating what he can find either in dumpsters or in nature. No savings account, not even a license or a birth certificate. Now, at first, it might be easy to think of this guy as someone who has lost touch with reality, maybe. We typically associate most people who are homeless with mental health concerns or addictions and possibly drug use. But in listening to his thoughts during this interview, I would describe him less as a madman and more as a spiritual ascetic. I'm inspired by his understanding of the problematic relationship many of us have with our possessions today. It begs the rhetorical question, do we own our possessions, or do our possessions own us? Robin is an educated, articulate, thoughtful person. Previously in his life, many would describe him as professionally successful, a whole career in digital marketing. And yet, over the years, he has arrived at the conclusion that our society has misled us. Instead of growing closer with the natural world, we have become more estranged. Instead of lifting up the lowly, our economics have only created a greater disparity between the rich and the poor. Instead of technology serving to liberate us from our daily tasks, we have become captives to our own creations. For Robin Greenfield and many religious and cultural thinkers throughout the generations, the answer to life's suffering is not in acquiring more things, but just the opposite. We are saved by opening ourselves to the natural, intangible riches of this world around us. Healthy living, therefore, is not a material endeavor, but it is a spiritual journey. Enter Jesus and the rich fool. Now, similar to last week's reflection on the Good Samaritan, today's story in Luke chapter 12 begins with an innocent enough question as there is a family squabble of some sort about inheritance, and someone asks Jesus what the Jewish law says about such things. But also, once again, as Jesus is prone to do, he uses such a question as a teaching opportunity for all listening in that moment. As he proclaims in verse 15, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." And then Jesus tells this parable, this opportunity for us to learn of a story of a rich man. Now, in this particular man, while he did very well in life according to how many may determine success, he had plenty of wealth, he had plenty of food, property, and comfort. You know those smiling, good-looking, laughing retirees in those financial wealth management commercials we see on TV? Maybe you see them especially during golf tournaments for one reason or another. You know those people, we think of those people, and maybe we can associate that rich man with those types of people. But according to the markers of God's kingdom, this man was not to be described as rich, but rather as a fool. Again, we read in verse 20, "But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, well, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." Maybe we should take that to interpret it as that rich man is going to die that very night. Or perhaps his life was being spiritually demanded of him in that moment of reckoning, as he was forced to confront the realities of his daily living with the realities of God's kingdom. Jesus tells his disciples all these worries that we've been thinking about these past few weeks and months as we've been going from one place to the next, they don't matter compared with the true contentment found in God's presence. Verse 22, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing." Jesus then talks about ravens, and he talks about lilies as examples of God's provisions that we see all about us each and every day. And then he invites the people to live by the values of God's kingdom. Verse 31, "Instead, seek God's kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Now look, it'd be hypocritical of me to say, sell everything you own, and then I get to go drive home in my own nice car to my own private home just down the road. And maybe for people like Robin Greenfield and other extreme minimalists, maybe you are inspired to become one of them. living without possessions is how some experience true liberation in this world. But that's probably not going to be the case for the majority of us. And I'm here to tell you, I think that's okay. Maybe the uncomfortable truth is that to be Christian in today's society, especially living in these United States, there is a certain amount of hypocrisy that comes with the daily reality of our lives. And from this acceptance that we will have these ongoing competing interests in our lives comes the opportunity to experience God's grace as well. Our wealth is not inherently evil. It's how we understand our wealth that presents either the opportunity to use it as a blessing for the kingdom or as a source of worry and greed. And it's from our understanding of what matters most in life that comes either foolishness or grace. Over the past couple weeks, we've been reflecting on God's grace within Jesus' depiction of the kingdom. We learned about the celebration of God's grace within this upside-down reality of both blessings and woes as Jesus preached from the Sermon on the Plain. We learned of God's grace within our relationships with our neighbors as we learned of the Good Samaritan story. And today, we learn of God's grace in the face of the myth of scarcity and the truth of God's abundance. The good news, friends, today we learn as we journey with Jesus to the cross during this season of Lent that we are invited to cast aside our attachments to this world and to instead nurture a reliance on God's provisions in our lives. And as we do so, we are reminded that while the luxuries we experience in this world, those that are comforting to us and make us happy on this earth, well, our ultimate joy is found in the abundance of God's grace. As the rich fool was told, this very night your life is being demanded of you, we are likewise reminded that this morning, at best, the material objects we surround ourselves with in our lives will only take us so far in this world. And at worst, these same possessions have the potential to lead us astray from a life in relationship with our Creator. So I leave us with a few questions to ponder this morning. How might we draw closer to God's abundance this Lenten season? How might we as a church reorient our lives and our values and our decisions that we make each and every day toward God's kingdom instead of the kingdom of this world? And how might we be transformed by God's grace as we seek to walk with Jesus? Friends, today we celebrate God's abundant kingdom throughout our observations of ravens and lilies, the very lives we have the potential to lead, and from the life of Jesus, who each and every day reflected such abundance with the way he spent the time he spent, with the people he met, and the lives he saved, as he invites us to that same salvation today. Whether we make $1 a day or we make $1 million a day, we celebrate that by God's grace we are all rich in God's presence, ourselves, the beloved children of our Creator. And so as we journey to the cross together, may we learn to trust and to celebrate God's abundance with each and every step that we walk together in life. For this, friends, we give all thanks and praise. Amen.